Hi everyone, I'm Scott Munson, Superintendent in the Marshall Public School District, and glad to be here today and joined by a couple of my colleagues that are going to talk about a very concerning topic in the nation, the state, and yes, even unfortunately in our school district, which is vaping and e-cigarettes. So I'm joined today by Brian Jones, our high school principal, and Travis Frazee, assistant principal at the high school. They had both given a presentation to the school board, and I think some of the information that they shared about vaping and e-cigarettes was very concerning to me as an educator, and I think it's something in our society and our community that we need to learn more about. So I've asked Brian and Travis to be here today and sort of walk through a presentation about vaping and e-cigarettes, and they have some things that they can show just as an awareness piece and maybe even talk a little bit about their personal experiences. So gentlemen, thank you for being here today. I'm just going to kind of turn this over to you and let you work through the presentation, and then if I have an opportunity to interject at all or have a question, I'll do so. So go ahead and get her started, and thanks again for being here.
Yeah, thanks, Scott.
Yep, thank you. Really, this started for us probably about 2 years ago. One day at school, we had a student and we were up working with them and in there, searching in their locker, looking in their locker, and we came across a couple of bottles of some oil, and we really weren't sure what that was. And so, and that was 2 years ago, and boy, it's changed, and we've learned a lot, and so we want to share some of that information with folks this morning.
Some of the things that we hope to be able to go through with you guys here today is to talk about the trends and the concerns that we've already kind of talked a little bit about, but that we have with our kids in school right now, and the impact that it has on them educationally. And honestly, first and foremost, their safety and their health. We're also going to be talking about the terminology and the variety of vaping devices that are out there. We've got kind of a history, so to speak, here to be able to go through just based on things that we have encountered in school, and then also through borrowing some resources from local resources. And then we're also going to talk about how each of those resources are used, kind of the things that are most popular, and so forth. So that's what we plan on talking about with you guys today.
Been a lot in the media, and and really in the last 6 months, I feel like the media has picked up on this story and has brought it more to mainstream, which has been, from our perspective, I think has been helpful. A year ago, there wasn't a lot of talk about this. Now we're hearing cities are taking steps, looking at maybe some ordinances, some age limits. At the state level, there's some talk. At the federal level, there's talk, there's numerous reports on any of what I would consider the mainstream media sources now about vaping. The president has gotten involved. Recently, he had kind of a summit on it. So the media has really brought us a lot of attention to this. And so as we go and make presentations with families, to parents, to our staff, to students, it's a lot easier to find current media clips to bring in and highlight the use of that.
And I know you guys are going to go into this, but I think it's important just to say right up front, and it falls in line with what you're talking about with how this has had such a media presence over the last 6 months, year, whatever, that the media is and you know, folks like educators and politicians and those involved in the health industry are concerned about this because of the health related factors and concerns and risks. So, you know, that might be just, if you take anything away from what we're talking about today, whether you're a student or a parent or a community member, this stuff is bad, and it's bad for your health, and I know Travis referenced it's bad for our students educationally because of the effects, and really that's been the focus of a lot of the discussions, is it's just a concerning topic.
and growing. And so now we hear, where we didn't hear 2 years ago, the term epidemic.
Right.
And it's past, it still gets lumped in with tobacco and industry because it is a form of smoking, but it's not the traditional tobacco, the cigarettes, the smokeless tobacco, the chewing tobacco, the snuff. We don't see a lot of that in our schools anymore.
Yep.
But I would say this, if it's not the number one issue that we deal with, it's number two. And a lot of times, second only probably to social media, and they're often wrapped together into one mess that we have to try to sort through.
Yeah.
So
definitely say that oftentimes, and two, not only like you said earlier that it affects their education, but because of their attention span. Oftentimes that if they feel the need, because of almost all of these devices or oils here that they access contain various amounts of nicotine in them, and the students get addicted to this, and it's highly addictive. And being highly addicted to that, then they need to be able to find ways to get that fix, so to speak, or whatever, even during the school day. And so they're going through a lot of different ways to be able to conceal these things. And I feel like manufacturers are also making it easier and easier to be able to conceal these things, as well. And we'll get into how those things have changed here, over the last, I would say 4 or 5 years or whatever. So, that nicotine, I've learned this year that it's the most highly addictive drug there is out there, and I had no idea that that was the case. So, it's definitely taken up a lot of time and energy to really figure out what to do in response to this, and we've really worked to really respond to this with education. And why not? We're educators, and we've been able to work to empower some of our teachers to help educate students on this stuff as well, and really feel like that's the most important and or effective way in getting kids to being able to make good decisions when it comes to this stuff, because it's going to be out there, and it's really hard to keep it out of the schools. When you've got kids that are getting to the point where they want to hide stuff in places where they know nobody's going to be looking. I mean, it must be a real serious issue to go that far.
it's readily available. It's fairly inexpensive. It's highly addictive. And so it just has many of these factors individually that when added together, it's creating a significant problem for the next generation. And I worry about what that leads to, because I often think this is, they used to talk smoking was a gateway for some people. Well, this is a gateway, and so this is getting a whole new generation hooked. We've seen statistic after statistic from the CDC and other very reputable research-based sources where teen tobacco use was on the decline for many years, and suddenly it's taken a sharp turn and it's spiked upward, and it's because of this stuff.
And that's a good segue back into the presentation and some of the information and data that we want to share. So again, go ahead, guys.
Yep.
Yeah. So some of the trends that we've been seeing here in school is it has become more and more popular, but we're also becoming more and more aware of it. I feel like too, and so as I talked about earlier, we've been working to educate kids here at school, staff as well. We've provided some presentations. Last year we had where we took groups of students by grade, and we had presentations done in our theater by grade. We took an entire school day and did, I don't know if they were a half an hour, I think about something like that, 25 minutes that we did to really talk about the trends and the harmfulness, in doing these things and making these decisions to do these things. Again,
we looked at it from the health aspect.
Yeah.
We took it and looked at it from the legal aspect. We looked at it from the Minnesota State High School League in terms of student discipline and consequences aspect. And so we tried to just help kids understand from multiple perspectives how important it is that they make healthy decisions. And really, and not from you're going to get in trouble, but just trying to educate our kids. They're young adults, and so trying to help them really choose wisely on the decisions that they're making.
Some people also wonder, how common are violations in the high school? Is it something that's really happening in Marshall? Yeah, it is. And it's really happening at about the same rate that it is across the state. Now, I have heard from other educators, principals, and so forth, or whatever, of rates that are a lot higher. I talked to one principal this year over the summer at a conference, and he told me that last year they had 55 different vaping violations in their school where kids were caught with a vape or vaping paraphernalia in school. So we haven't had that many, but like I say, it still kind of goes along with where things are at in regards to the state. I think last year we probably had maybe 6. I think this year we've had 4 so far. But you can see again here, and just referencing a survey from the Minnesota Department of Education from it was the Minnesota Youth Tobacco Survey from 2014 to 2017. You can see the growth on this PowerPoint here, and seeing how as we move along here in the years that per grade things are continuing to go up, to rise. So, and the thing is, the last couple of years when I talked about education, we really didn't know a whole lot about, and I say we, I'm talking about principals all across the state. I mean, they really didn't know the harmful effects of this, and how do we respond to this and that or whatever. And so I'm glad that what we've done so far and working to educate people, and I'm really happy to be here today to be able to talk about this stuff and the seriousness of this stuff, because I think there are a lot of people that just don't know a lot about it, including our parents. And I really feel like it's a blessing today to be able to talk about this stuff, to be able to get this information out to people so they know about that.
This next slide that you're going to be looking at comes from every 3 years in Minnesota, public school students in specific grades are asked to take a survey, a student health survey. And so what's in front of you is information from the spring of 19. And if we look specifically at our 8th graders, our 9th graders, because our 8th graders then are our 9th graders now, 9th graders then were our 10th graders now, and our 11th graders then were our 12th graders now. So we're talking about, this is specific to Marshall High School. And so if you just look, and as you look at this on your screen at home, you'll see some of these percentages. And so when we compare that to the state, we were just a couple of percentage points off, and particularly in grade, when we looked at 8th grade last year, and about 5% of our students had said they had vaped at least in the last 30 days. Our high school current seniors, it was about 18%. The state average was about 20%. And so just to give you an idea, what do those numbers look like? Well, at Marshall High School, 20% of a grade, we're talking 40 kids. And so we've got 4 grades, and you quickly do the math. And so just to give you the viewers at home some idea and perspective on what those percentage, this is the number of students that we're talking about. And what I think is most scary, and as we kind of progress through some of the research now that's coming out that's talking about not just vaping, but approximately 1/3 of those students who vape have vaped THC, which is marijuana, in the last 30 days. And so, I'm talking 20 kids have vaped the last 30 days, last spring, 1/3 of that. So now we're looking at about seven students. That's about 30 students in our high school, which tells me that are actively using marijuana or a form of marijuana to medicate, self-medicate, escape from something. And we just know as educators the harmful effects that go along with that. And that's so concerning. So we work with our providers in the community to try to align resources, work with parents, work with human services, the chemical dependency people, just to try to provide resources for our kids and our families. Because a lot of times our families, our parents, they don't know where to turn when their students are choosing to participate in some of these harmful activities.
It's interesting too, maybe interesting isn't the right word, but the Minnesota Student Survey that, like you said, Brian, is administered every 3 years, they did not ask 5th graders, because that's the other grade that's included in the survey. They did not ask 5th graders about vaping or e-cigarettes, and I could just about guarantee that when that survey is done again in 2022 or whenever, that will be a question there for fifth graders, because this is a trickle down thing. This was really sad. This week I had a conversation with one of my colleagues in Minnesota who's a superintendent, and they had confiscated a vape device from a kindergarten student. Now, I don't know if that kindergarten student knew what it was, or who they got it from or whatever, but they had unfortunately also experimented with it and knew that it was a cherry flavored juice. And that was really heartbreaking. So that's the other side of it, is just that it continues to sort of unfortunately slide down into the lower grades, and these younger kids, as young as kindergartners, that number one, they probably don't know what it is and just try it. I mean, they're the inquisitive nature, but then just the harmfulness that even doing this one or two times can have. So saying that, I'll
and just how addictive it is, Scott.
Yeah.
Well, as Travis and I have worked with some of our students, I think probably the earliest that we've had a student tell us they started was in 7th grade. And so a 7th grader is going to be 13 years old. And we may have some viewers out there who say, who are older and say, well, when I was 13, people were smoking cigarettes. Mm-hmm. Well, I would venture to speculate that when that person, if that's the mindset, when they were 13, they didn't know the harmful effects that smoking have back then that we know now. And so this is so new. We're just now starting to see those harmful effects that vaping has on our kids. And so when I hear a 13-year-old now say, well, I don't think it's going to hurt me, or we have that, as we're young, we have this idea that we're invincible. Mm-hmm. and we've seen that hasn't changed since the beginning of time when working with teenagers. But there's so many things now of what's in these oils and these substances that our kids are putting in our body that they're seeing some medical effects negatively early on, and that's concerning and scary.
The interesting thing about the slide that we have pulled up right now is maybe a little bit of a disconnect. This is a question asking students how wrong their parents would feel if they vaped or used an e-cigarette, and like our 11th graders, and I'm going to say only 15% of the males students and only 3% of the female students said not at all wrong. I mean, we want that number to be different, right? It just seems to be a disconnect, because I would guess if we asked parents this question, especially right after an informative presentation on how harmful this can be, the data would be completely different for the kids and the parents.
And I think that's because, to be honest, this is so new. Yeah. A lot of parents don't know, don't understand, don't recognize what these devices are if they see them in their home. Yeah. We didn't know 2 years ago when we saw the bottles of oil in a locker. We didn't know what they were. Yeah. And the other part of that is the manufacturers are making these items so easy to hide and conceal. Yeah. It's not like a traditional pack of cigarettes and a lighter. Those are easily recognizable. This stuff isn't, and when we get to that, and we'll show folks there what some of it is, the size of some of it, I think they're going to be surprised. But I think that's why on the slide that's in front of people, why we see some disconnect there is I just think we've got to educate the adults too, and it changes so fast. It's technology too that's driving some of this, because it's pretty impressive, and I don't mean that in a good way, technology that we're going to show people about this stuff.
So let's spend just a couple minutes on the terminology. I understand it's really important, but I think it's more important probably to look at some of the devices and talk a little bit about those. So back to the presentation, if you will.
Yeah, excuse me. So we have e-cigarettes here that we'll be talking about here, and vaping. That we're going to be showing you those images here close up and that or whatever, so you can get a good look at those things. We're talking about e-juice and juice. E-juice and juice is basically what goes inside of it, into the vape and that or whatever. Juul and juuling have these things called pods. So if you hear people talking about that or whatever, we'll also show you what that is here in just a little bit.
You're not going to hear your kids, if you're a parent out there, you're not going to hear your kids talk about an e-cigarette. they don't use that terminology. You're going to hear, like Travis said, vape, Juul, a dab. That's the current language, and it's evolving. I'm not a multilingual speaker, but sometimes working with teenagers, you learn this language of teens, and now it's not officially recognized language, but sometimes it's like listening to code and trying to decipher. And so if we can just clue the adults in, when they maybe hear some of these terms in passing, they'll kind of go, maybe that's a warning sign for me to be concerned.
Yeah, Brian, I'm glad that you brought that up. In regards to the dab, what he's referring to is a dab pen, and that's what's used a lot of times with pens that are used to be able to consume oil or wax that has THC in it. And so that is illegal for anyone in the state of Minnesota, no matter what age you are.
So if you hear dab, that's THC, that's marijuana. Other times, if they're talking Juul, sometimes maybe they're talking a substance that's nicotine only.
So I want to talk a little bit about the evolution of e-cigarettes here, and we're going to talk about these oils as well here. So keep in mind that a lot of the companies are stating right now that they are not working to target youth. But when you look at these things, I don't know how you can look at them, smell these things, and obviously we can't do that with you here today. But I want you to take a look at these things that are out there and the flavors and so forth or whatever. And understand, how easy it is for kids to look at this stuff and go, man, I think I want to try that. What could be wrong with that? Cotton
Looks
candy?
fun.
Yeah. So, some of the things that I think that have really stood out for statistics or facts, rather, in regards to talk about how bad this stuff is for you. The thing that sticks with me is looking at the bottom part of this slide, the bottom bullet there, and saying cancer risk from formaldehyde 5 to 15% higher for e-cigarettes than cigarettes. And we think about that. I remember growing up and learning, you don't smoke cigarettes because you don't want to die of lung cancer. And I've had family members that have died of lung cancer and that or whatever. And now I'm looking at this and going, geez.
So the glycol is included in all of this, and when that is, I'll say heated or there's a chemical reaction of some sort, that releases the formaldehyde gas, and the formaldehyde is 5 to 15 times more potent or dangerous in terms of cancer causing. So, and I think, I don't know if you have that slide in here or not, Travis, but I think one whatever you call it, a hit or whatever you call it, is the same as a pack of cigarettes.
Yeah, so in a pod, which is the container that the oils go into, and the oils come in different strengths, different potency in terms of the milligrams of the nicotine that's in. But in a Juul, for instance, so a Juul is a brand that has a preloaded pod that has oil, and so I'll hold one up here. And the concentration of the nicotine in a pod, Scott, just what you were saying, is the equivalent amount of nicotine that would be contained in 20 cigarettes, which is a pack of cigarettes. So imagine a concentrated form of all the nicotine in a pack of cigarettes being contained in this pod right here.
So we have like 18 milligrams of nicotine, or 36 milligrams of nicotine, which is significantly higher than cigarettes.
And so we know how addictive nicotine is. Well, now we take and we put a very concentrated amount of nicotine in this small, and so you can see how quickly it becomes an addictive substance to really hook kids.
Yep.
Yeah. This oil here, specifically this one here, this was confiscated in school from a student. This one here had 50 milligrams of nicotine, so that's the highest I've seen. But yeah, that's a huge difference.
So guys, even though we have a lot more information in the presentation, why don't you talk a little bit about what you have here, because these are things as I've seen them. And I know, Brian, you told the story about one of your first encounters with an e-cigarette or vaping device was actually a teacher who brought it to you because they felt like it was a thumb drive for a computer, and were trying to figure out how to use it to see what was on there.
Right, I thought a kid had left it behind in a computer class, and so they wanted to see who it was, so they're trying to put it in, and realized this isn't a thumb drive. I'm not sure what this is, but a couple things, and I'll just show you sort of the evolution that we've seen. And so this would be a form of an electronic cigarette, and it's a little bit bigger, it's heavy, and so they all kind of work the same way. And I brought a ruler just along so folks could see, really about 6 inches tall, pretty heavy duty, weighs probably a pound, but they all work the same way. They all have a battery, a power source. So this one has a couple of batteries, and that's certainly changed over time. They all have some sort of a chamber right here, and the chamber is where the oils would go. And they have a heating element. So the battery powers the heating element. The heating element then takes the oil and changes it to a vapor, and they all have some sort of a mouthpiece. And so when that's inhaled, it changes from a liquid to a vapor, and that's what the person inhales into their lungs with the nicotine and all the other substances that are in there. But as time has gone by, these devices have gotten quite a bit smaller, but they still have the same basic components. So, this part down here would be the heating element in the battery storage area. The black part that you see here is the oil storage container, and then has a mouthpiece. And so this would sort of be, again, second generation. But then we started seeing these, and you can see the size of this. What's that, maybe 3-4 inches tall, 3.5 inches tall. But look how thin this is, and how easily that would be concealed and it looks like an iPod that was a music player from just probably, I don't know, 5 years ago maybe. But again, same components. Now what we saw was, as the technology changed, the batteries got a lot smaller. So this would have a lithium-ion rechargeable battery, has a micro USB charging port down here on the very bottom. The black part is the oil chamber, and then the mouthpiece is right on the edge of the chamber. And so if you've got a student who is, for instance, is sitting in class, and if I have this in my pocket, you can't even see, teacher turns around to write on the board, I can just pull it out, put it right up to my mouth, and take a hit. And so, but it's still gotten even smaller. And so Travis, we've talked about a Juul, probably the most common, when you say the most popular form that kids use. You can buy these at any C-store, just about, online. That's what parents say, well, don't you have to be 18 to buy them? You do, but here's what we see kids do. They'll buy a prepaid credit card, they'll order it online, have it shipped to their buddy's house, it's delivered before their parents get home, and boom, I've got it. It's not that hard, and click on a couple of websites that say I'm 18, and it's on its way. But this is a Juul, and so a Juul is even smaller and thinner, takes up less room. This is down now to about 3 inches. And so, but these are dedicated devices. But now what we've seen really in the area of these is ways to conceal it even more. And I've got a couple of products that I brought along here. This is a school backpack. It's produced by a company called Vaporware, and has some hidden compartments like in the straps that you could essentially run a tube through. If anybody is a hiker or maybe a biker and they use a Camelback backpack that has a water delivery system, this works much in the same way and can have a tube that comes down, and then it's right by the mouthpiece. So if the person's carrying it on their back and have a tube, they can just bring it up right to their mouth and take a quick hit. Other things we've seen, clothing now is starting to appear. Hooded sweatshirt on the back, also by Vaporware. Not that I want to give this company any attention, but hooded sweatshirt, and the strings of the sweatshirt have a vape device. And so I'll take the green part off. It doesn't stand out as much, but you're in a crowd at the mall, movie theater, class, school, wherever, and now they just bring it right up to their mouth, and you think that a kid's just maybe chewing on the string of their hoodie at school. And so those are some things that are pretty concerning to us in terms of how they're concealing them. A few other devices that we've seen. This is a vape watch. I don't know how many of our viewers at home might have an Apple Watch. It's a fully functioning watch. but you can pop this off. We actually had a young person in school who had this device. You can pop this off, and here is the vape device. I'll hold it here steady so that people can see if it'll stand up. But this device, the top part is a chamber. That's where the oil goes. Again, lithium-ion battery that you recharge just like you would your phone. You plug it into the wall, plug it into your computer. The top part right here that kind of raises up, that's the mouthpiece. And so that's a vape watch. And that can be with a nicotine oil or a nicotine oil that's infused with THC, with marijuana. Travis, you can jump into, here's another one, a small micro. This is called, now we're down to 2 inches. 2 inches in height, and so really easy to conceal. The pod oil chamber mouthpiece just goes in right in like that. You fill this up with the type of oil that you want to have, and that's your reservoir. And a battery is probably going to last you. I think some of the stuff we've seen, it was at the number like 200 sort of drags, if you will, that the person could take.
All right, and talking about a couple other things here, we talked about the jewel and that. This is another piece here that we received, just
kind of let people see how tall that is.
Yeah, and this is kind of a one-time use. This is not a rechargeable deal, but I think you can buy these for about $5, and then when you're done with them, you can just throw them away. Kind of a disposable type device.
We would consider this to be a disposable vape pen. So we say one-time use. We're not talking about one drag. We're talking about maybe 100 drags off of this before you empty the oil chamber, but then you throw the pen away.
Yeah, so another style here is basically the pen looks kind of more like a cigarette or design in that or whatever, and these are used, they got little chargers in that or whatever with them. I don't think this one uses that per se, but there are other pens out there. This charger here, obviously, you just put it right into the computer. Pretty easy to do. If we can on this one here, maybe this side here or whatever. But this is something that found on a student here at school. These are used to be able to charge dab pens, or at least this model was. And so the dab pen again is the one that's used primarily to vape THC, okay, or oil that has THC in it.
And these chargers recharge the lithium-ion battery.
Yeah.
Here's one that I think people would really be surprised about. It's about a 6-inch pen. Actually writes fairly nice, just a writing pen. But there's a button on it, and the button is what turns the vape pen on and off. You just unscrew the top, and now you have the mouthpiece. And so this would be where the person inhales. The battery runs down, you just unscrew and take the mouthpiece off. And then you can screw in, just like what Travis was saying, the USB charger on the end, plug it right into your computer, and now it charges very easily from any USB, whether that be a charger at home or a computer, and so that's kind of what we're seeing.
So let's just because we want to be respectful of everyone's time, let's kind of wrap this up, and any questions that parents have or students, if they feel like they're addicted to this or it's impacting any of their friends or whatever, they can and should come to a school staff member, including you two. But as a parent, if a parent has concerns, what are some resources for them to learn more, to get their child help? How can we support parents, I guess?
Sure. The Department of Health has some great resources out there. I would encourage people to take a look there. Talk to your school nurse, your school counselor. We have in our district, and all districts are required to have what's called a chemical pre-assessment team. Mm-hmm. And so that team, we meet twice a month, and we work with families to try to help get them some support. And so you can give anyone at the school a call. We'll be glad to meet with them, have a conversation. A lot of websites out there. We're seeing the American Lung Association starting to come out with some quit plans. And really, it's a process of, just like with any other addiction, of ongoing support, and it's a journey and it's a process. But we all know, we believe certainly the best way to do that is to prevent the start. Have those conversations with your kids. Travis talked about marketing of some of the oils, some of the products. This looks just like many of you probably have, their kids have a home for chapstick. This is a container. He talked about dabbing with the wax. It's a wax storage device. That's what this colorful thing is too. And so what I've said to parents before is how do I know, other than just to search my child's room? And I've said that's a great place to start. If you've got teenager boys in particular at home and you walk by their bedroom and it smells good, it smells fruity, I'd be concerned. If it smells like anything than dirty socks and body odor, as a parent, boy, I'm getting concerned if it smells like strawberry, banana, kiwi, whatever. Cheesecake. That's going to put, as a parent, that would put me on alert.
What would be, from you two, what would be final messages, first of all, for students, and second, for parents and community members? I mean, there's a lot of information that we've all learned in the last couple of years about how bad this is, but what are a couple final points for students and for parents and community members that you two would want to make?
Well, one of the things that I would say to kids and our students, and I've said this before, and students that I've talked to about this, is that we could be doing a lot of things. We could be talking about a lot of things here today, but we're spending a lot of time talking about this right now because we feel like it is that serious. And even if you're not, maybe if you have been using or things like that or whatever, and maybe you're feeling like, it's not that big of a deal or whatever, I'm really concerned. I'm concerned about the impacts on your health in the future, and I want you guys to have a long life. We can do all we want to educate kids here at school and that or whatever, but if their quality of life is going to be hampered by something like this and they're not able to reach their potential, then I mean that's a big issue. I don't want kids to go through that. We care a lot about kids. That's why we do what we do here in Marshall, and
This time of year message I'd have with our kids is many of them are going to be around as we move into the holidays. They're going to have the opportunity to see aunts, uncles, grandparents who are older. Maybe they've got some of those family members who once upon a time smoked, or maybe still currently do, in cigarettes. And I would ask our kids to have that conversation with those folks. Would you do anything different? Do you wish you could stop? And sort of to project into the future, because I'm pretty sure that those folks probably didn't understand the harmful effects back when they were young and when they started, just exactly like what our kids are dealing with now. And let the kids sort of have that opportunity to look forward 50, 60, 70 years into the future and sort of see, is that where I want to be? Do I want my health to be in some sort of compromised state? I think that would help. The second part of your question, Scott, you asked as to what message would we have for parents.
Yep.
Talk to your kids. And don't, the advice would be don't lecture them, because they don't want to hear a lecture. Have a conversation with them. And just start by asking them to, hey, I heard this term, can you tell me what it means? Do you have any friends who are doing this? Do you know anyone who's done it? Have you tried it? And if they say yes, that's a teachable moment. Yeah. That's not a punishable moment, because we've got to support our kids, and we hold kids accountable, but we understand that you can do that in a multitude of ways. It's not always just about punishment. And so if your kids trust you enough to have those conversations, boy, don't drop the hammer on them right away, but be willing to listen and support them, because again, this is an epidemic that we're seeing in our country, in our state, and here in Marshall. We're no different.
Absolutely. Guys, thanks a lot. We could go on for a long time because it is that important. We'll ask the folks here at Studio One TV to put up your phone number, emails you can find on our website, which is www.marshall.k12.mn.us. If anybody has questions, we really encourage them to reach out to us. And it doesn't have to be one of these two. It can be myself, like you said, a nurse, a counselor, other administrators. This is a very alarming topic. It's unfortunate that we are here to share information about it, but we need to, because it's, like you said, it's an epidemic. So have a great rest of the day, and like I said, if you have questions, just let us know. Thanks for taking time to watch this show.
Thank you.
Thanks.